This is an age of disruption, of profound revolutionary change.
What we're really asking ministers is to empower the ambassadors.
The only thing that you really push forth is the truth.
You don't see many women represented when it comes to the decisions as to how to handle the pandemic.
Good morning and welcome to the second day of this year's Politico Tech Summit. I'm Aoife White, Politico's Technology and Competition Editor. Today we're going to be taking you to virtual worlds and to the front lines of the misinformation battle. We'll be discussing the challenges of moderating content and ensuring that data protection rules are enforced. And we'll be hearing why standardization has become a hot topic for tech and for geopolitics. But first, I'd like to thank our partners for making this summit possible, our presenting partner Google and our networking partner Vodafone. Before we start, a few housekeeping rules. You can ask questions through the swap card platform if you're in the room. You can scan the QR code on the screens. Otherwise, you'll find the instructions on our event website. If you're already on the platform, feel free to chat with fellow attendees and ask questions in the questions box to the right of the screen on a desktop and below the live stream if you're viewing on your mobile. For some of our sessions, you can ask questions in person, and our moderators will let you know when you can do that. Now, we love to debate, so if you hear something that you're interested in and you want to talk about it, please tweet on social media or Twitter or anything else that you care to. We have a hashtag, Politico Tech Europe. But I'll hand you over now to Jan Volpicelli, who's going to take us into the virtual world. Over to you, Jan.
Thank you, Aoife. Hi, everyone. I'm Jan Volpicelli, and I'm going to take you into the virtual worlds, apparently. Or also known as the metaverse. Nobody really knows what it is. I mean, the last time I heard about it was in a sci-fi novel by Neil Stephenson, but now it's apparently a thing, and also it's something that there is a commission initiative on. So we're going to try and understand what's going on and why we need it. Let's call in our speakers. We have Ludwig Vorreicher, Managing Director from NVIDIA. And we have also the fantastic Dragos Tudoraka from the New, who has just finished a fairly successful round of negotiations regarding the AI Act yesterday. General purpose AI is safe. There should be a couple of more speakers joining us virtually. Here they are. We have Joachim Schwerlin, Principal Economist from DG GROW, European Commission, and equally from the Commission, but from DG Connectors, Rihanna Schwenninger-Ladach, who is in charge of interactive technologies and is essentially the driving force behind the virtual worlds, brackets, metaverses initiative, which is this Commission project. Hi, everyone. I hope you can hear me. I'm not sure whether I can hear you. You're on mute, but we will be going. Okay, Joaquin, I can hear. Rihanna,
hi there.
Okay,
yeah, hi
here
there.
you are. Fantastic. So before we start, I'd like to ask all of you a question, including the panelists, but I'm asking actually the audience. Who has an idea what the metaverse is? Can you raise your hands? Including panelists. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. About 10 people. Okay, it's not bad. It's half. Have you raised your hands, Joachim and Rihanna?
Yes, I did.
Okay,
well, I pretend.
Okay, right.
I didn't.
Who among the audience uses some kind of virtual world weekly, and also panelists? Can you raise your hands if you use metaverse or virtual reality every week? One person? Wow, you're the nerd. Okay, you too?
No, there was a second.
A second one. Please be kind of vigorous in your raising. And third, who knows among the audience and the panelists what Web 4 is? Okay, 2 people among the panelists. That's fantastic. Okay, right. Well, Rihanna, I think it probably starts with you, to be honest. So you are spearheading the Commission's non-legislative initiative on virtual worlds, aka metaverses. It's going to be a communication, citizen panels about this elusive concept. This have been concluded just a couple of days ago. There were some recommendations out, and there is an ongoing consultation which is still ongoing. Will close in May, and the initiative will finally land. We learned yesterday in June, not in May anymore. So, what is going on? Why do we need this? Since you are free to speak, Rihanna.
Yeah. Hi, Jan. Hi, everyone. So apologies, I could not, travel through the virtual worlds to really cross the Ardennes and be with you, in half an hour. That will come. So greetings from Luxembourg.
Fantastic.
I like, Jan, when you started by saying that everybody speaks about it and nobody knows. It reminds me of the Yeti. Everybody has heard about it. Nobody has seen it. So
the Yeti.
We hope, or the Loch Ness
snowman. Yeah, of course.
Yeah, exactly. So indeed. So the initiative, what it is about, what is the gist, the timing. So it is a non-legislative initiative that we are going to present before summer. The date is shifting, but that is administrative, because as you know, what we call in our jargon, the liste des points prévus of the college is very dynamic, and dates are changed to really make sure that all the big files can be adopted on the right time. So that's really, it's no more than that.
Okay.
Now, what is it going to be?
Right.
Well, we're working out on the output, so that will be our surprise, clearly. So what is the spirit? So it is going to be a non-legislative initiative, clearly, for the stage. It is about the visions, the actions, the principles that we think are important to put on the table upfront now, because virtual worlds, beyond the hype that we see with metaverses, virtual worlds are an important enablers for a lot of industrial and societal sectors, including for the public administration, for public services, to engage in a closer way with citizens. And virtual worlds are not an end game. They are important enablers for a much wider technological transition, which is going to be Web 4, which you mentioned.
Web 4, right.
Voilà.
What is Web 4?
So Web 4 is mentioned in the long-term communication on the competitiveness of Europe.
I saw that, but I didn't see it anywhere else. So I would like to have a definition.
So indeed, it is a technological transformation where we see this seamless technological transformation happening, where there will be a seamless integration of technologies, of objects between themselves, of objects to people, so that we allow this blurring between virtual worlds and the real world. And it allows also feedbacks, instant and real-time feedbacks. So it's a technological transformation that has started, that will build on the achievements of Web 2, on the decentralized technologies of Web 3, where we will have the seamless integration of technology.
Just very quick, because we have 4 speakers, but you are of course the one at the very tip of the spear. Are we regulating the Yeti, or are we trying to make communications about the Yeti? Why do we need this? What do you think the metaverse is?
So right now we are not regulating. We have covering at the important dimension of virtual worlds and of Web 4, we have future-proof legislation in place. So in relation to accountability, we have the DSA, the DMA.
Yeah.
In relation to data, personal data, we have GDPR, which applies to virtual worlds. Non-personal data, we will have the upcoming Data Act. We have the AI Act, and we're not speaking about it, but we have the MiCA regulation, which is going to create the crypto asset bazaar. So right now, strong regulatory framework in place, which gives us very good baseline to.
Why do we need a communication about the Yeti?
Why will it be communication on something else? We need that to show that virtual worlds are an important economic and technological enablers for the wider transformation, and that we want to lead this technological transformation.
So it's a
and
way
that
to plant
our
a flag.
values, and it's also actions, and to say that developments the developments that we see should be done with our values and principles. That is absolutely important and in line with our legislation.
Right. Dragos, why are you here?
That's a good question, actually. I wanted to ask you, but I didn't get the chance. First of all, thanks, because it's refreshing to get out of the AI discussion for half an hour with ChatGPT basically every day, several interviews. So talking about something else for a change is a good thing. But as you saw, I didn't raise my hand when you asked who knows what, the metaverse is, because I ask myself what it is that we're talking about. And I think as we've heard...
So you came here to learn.
I'm here to learn. As you see, I'm also taking
Fantastic.
notes. Although, and you might say that I was nuts for doing that, in the start when I was preparing my amendments to the AI Act about a year ago, I
had a little amendment. Yeah, I remember that.
I had an amendment where I wanted to squeeze somewhat a flag
I remember that.
on metaverse in the text. No one else understood what I wanted to do, so I dropped it. But for me, indeed, understanding what it is that we're talking about is key. Because, as you saw, we have different understandings, at least I have different understandings of what metaverse is, in the sense that you have one way of looking at it, which is controlled virtual worlds. You have a parallel virtual factory, a digital twin of a factory. You have a digital twin of a working environment in any company. You have a game that is a virtual world.
Then you have Mark Zuckerberg.
Or then you have, as I understood, if I understood well what Web 4 is supposed to be, or you have Web 4. You have this sort of parallel virtual world with integration of connected objects, integration of... I don't know Web 4, but I can imagine a world based on the evolutions and the progress of technology. I can imagine a moment when you have that sort of a parallel virtual world where you have virtual personas connected to real-life individuals, integrating according to some rules that then the question is who defines them. But anyway, that's for the conversation, I guess. And for me, that is the kind of a metaverse that at least I am concerned about. For the first one, less concerned.
As what Politico's newsletter would define a key MEP working on the AI Act. What's your perspective? I mean, what can you bring to the table here in terms of what the role of AI possibly is going to be?
I think that when it comes to the current virtual worlds that I understand the Commission is going to address through this communication, I think there the key is whether and as long as these control environments work on preset scripts, then honestly, I agree, I don't think there is a need for legislative intervention of any sort. I think just putting some principles out there, setting some sort of a course in terms of generic guidelines is enough. But for me, the question even there with, again, controlled environments is what happens if some of those scripts are going to be run by AI?
Which is not beyond the realm of possibility.
Which is not beyond the realm of possibility. I will take one example for NPCs in games. NPCs, non-playing characters.
Non-playing characters, which is a table insult.
They intervene in the game according to a preset script. What if you put AI technology behind the NPCs so that it's no longer foreseeable?
Which is the case in many games, right?
Could be, but the script becomes a bit more loose, becomes a bit less controlled. And then the question is, what's going to happen with interaction in those games there and then? Again, I don't have answers. At least today, I don't have answers to that. I have questions.
Two final things I want to ask you. Thank you for your eloquence. The first thing is your definition. Right now, your working definition of the metaverse, when you think about it.
Well, the one that concerns me and where I would like that we start having a real conversation already now is indeed Web 4. For me, that is the metaverse.
Okay.
That from a politician's angle concerns me in the sense that I think there we have to start discussing already
massive
now,
web.
how do we want to look towards that future and how do we want to prepare for that future? I'm not saying that we should start writing rules about it, but I'm saying that a conversation, just like maybe we should have started to have on AI already much earlier, I think we should start having it today.
Right. The second question I had is I actually read the recommendations from the citizens panels after the various citizen panels on the metaverse, which landed yesterday, there was this fantastic passage, which is my favorite. So one recommendation was about having some kind of virtual worlds police aided by AI. What do you think?
Well, actually, that is one, if you see, this is one of my questions. Who polices the metaverse Web 4?
The AI, according to the citizens panels.
Well, AI, but again, who takes the responsibility for policing? First of all, who takes the responsibility of writing the rules? Who governs that future metaverse? Because in the physical world, you see, you have a social contract. You have a social contract, that's how our world works, between the governments and the citizens. In a metaverse, again, not in the current metaverse where you just have a controlled environment, but in the Web 4,
right, when it exists.
Again, who is going to be the government? I'm not saying it should be governed, because it shouldn't. I think it should still be a free as internet is today.
Yeah.
But again, we should have a conversation of how do you write the rules of the game, the rules of engagement.
I saw what you did there.
about that future Web 4.4. And then also privacy, I think, needs to be looked at from a completely different angle, because unlike the physical world where you can still hide, if you choose to be somewhat outside of the scope and the eye of the ones governing you, in a metaverse where almost all of your features, because you'll have to integrate in that metaverse somehow, and therefore privacy is much harder to protect, it's much harder to hide your persona in a metaverse, and then I think rules of privacy in that sort of metaverse of the future would also be a key question. And then again, who polices the rules? Who ensures the enforcement of those rules?
Do you want the AI to be the virtual worlds police?
Well, it's going to be there anyway.
The AI, sorry.
Whether it's going to be an AI-driven police, we might get there. AI is certainly going to be rule that metaverse anyway.
Okay. Well, this really scares me anyway. Ludwig, industry representative, more or less. Does the metaverse exist?
Well, first of all, I've heard the word metaverse used a dozen times here in a singular. I don't think it exists in a singular, and it will not exist as one metaverse.
That's going to break many people's hearts.
Well,
because they think there must be one single interoperable metaverse.
I would beg to disagree.
Please go on.
There may be a Web 4 at some point that allows individuals and companies to interact on this 3D lifelike platform with objects and with others, but it will not be one platform.
Okay.
It is already working today. The metaverses exist in industrial context, for instance, in gaming, but it's many, and I don't think there will be one.
But I think the idea is essentially that you get a metaverse once you bridge and you make interoperable those different virtual realities and worlds.
They could connect, but they would still be controlled by different entities, I am certain. I don't see any single company or public entity controlling the Web 4.
There was an attempt, right?
Well, maybe, but I have seen less of that in recent months. So.
Me too. But yeah, yourself, as a person who works, of course, in technology, do you have a bullish outlook on the metaverse and virtual worlds or metaverses?
I am bullish on industrial and professional uses of this space that is often referred to as the metaverse, a platform where people can interact with each other much more naturally than they can on the traditional Zoom conference or the like, where, for instance, in one example that we're involved in, the engineers that plan new production lines at BMW on 3 continents collaborate together in that space. Mm-hmm. And once the production line starts operating, it sends data back to that digital twin, which effectively is the platform in which they cooperate.
Yeah.
Then this is an early implementation of such an industrial metaverse.
Right. 2 questions. Actually, the first one is, what would you like to see in the Commission's communication? What would be a good communication, in your opinion?
Well, first of all, to be open to the evolution of this technology. And secondly, perhaps to not be too early in trying to regulate it. And from what I heard just now from Rana is that this is not the attempt. I mean, I can understand that the Commission is perhaps worried that in other technological evolutions, it was a bit too late. But being too early is perhaps more dangerous than being a little late, because it can stifle innovation. And we see a lot of innovation happening here, especially also in Europe, in the industrial metaverse space right now.
Has NVIDIA submitted its feedback to the consultation already?
We have not been invited, and we have
No,
not
the consultation is open. You can just go on the website.
Oh, okay. I will certainly look at that.
Okay, please do. Joachim, I'm coming to you finally. How are you doing? One thing I remember from previous communications is that you have 3 or 4 definitions of the metaverse. Can you...
Oh.
Please, we are all ears.
It must be age that I don't recall them all, but what you rightly point at is that indeed, as has been said, we have not one metaverse, but we have different metaverses. And I would probably summarize what is new in just one word, which is the immersiveness, because I actually don't think that anything that we discuss in the context of metaverse or virtual worlds is really new. What we see is that there are combinations of existing trends that accelerate innovation and the development of use cases, as Ludwig has pointed at. And probably one feature that is a new dimension, in our opinion, is the immersiveness. So you bring together the real and the virtual world, and yet you achieve a level of integration which not only allows you to develop new use cases and advance innovation, but it also changes your mind. And this has 2 sides. It can open up to creativity. But what we also see in research, and we have a number of discussions with psychologists, for example, is that there are psychological, health, basic anthropological issues that the metaverses bring about, because it's a completely different thing to be immersed in a virtual world as it is to watch a screen and spend a lot of time doing these things. So there are different concepts, there are different definitions. What I take from the discussion, and I agree to everything that has basically been said by now, is that we probably have 2 big perspectives on the metaverse. The one thing, and that brings to the question of what is Web 4. Actually, I don't know what Web 4 is. I'm curious to know what Web 4 is. And therefore I didn't raise my hand. But if you start looking at the metaverses from the perspective of the internet as it is today, so basically Web 2.0, you see a huge space that is corrupted in many ways, because you have a lot of private and public entities that take the data of citizens without really, in my opinion, proper consent, that monetize them and that create huge dominant positions in order to leverage their business models. On the opposite side, you have completely decentralized technologies like blockchain, distributed ledger technologies, which are technologies that the Commission has been advancing for a very long time, and the MiCA regulation and other things have been mentioned. And this brings us to a bottom-up, a decentralized approach. And this is what is Web 3, in my opinion. Web 3, as such, defined from a blockchain perspective, would be an endpoint, because if something is decentralized, it cannot be more than truly decentralized, but it's very difficult, of course, to achieve that. If you think more in terms of the internet perspective, Web 2.0, Web 3.0, Web 4.0, you could theoretically end up with Web 10.0 or 11.0. This is a sort of cycles of development that you have from that perspective. I think that both will exist, they will coexist. There are combinations of that, there are other elements, but we will certainly not have one metaverse. And like with blockchain technology, we will have closed and open systems, we have interconnected and non-interconnected systems. All of them have their use cases, all of them have their value, and I think it's very early and we should not really already prejudge the outcome of these different trajectories, because they all have their reason to be there.
Web 3 didn't really pan out eventually, did it? Do you think Web 3 was a eventually successful proposition?
Web
the kind of web powered by...
Web 3 is the future. I mean, look,
it is the future.
Blockchain is here for 15 years. And I think that there are already a number of things in the blockchain space that have proven their value for a very, very long time. Take Bitcoin, take the Ethereum ecosystem, take a lot of things in the financial domain that are now going on also in the real economy. We have huge blockchain-based infrastructures using NFTs, digital twins, etc., built, including with support from the Commission, like the anti-counterfeiting blockchain infrastructure. And the challenge is really to get more into the decentralization, because we have built up for hundreds of years centralized systems. We've seen the risk of that in the financial crisis and afterwards. And now there is, I think, a societal need to again go back to local.
No, I totally agree with the fact that there are some use cases for crypto technology and blockchains. What I'm saying is that Web3 was this utopian vision predicated on the idea that those technologies would at some point replace the corporate walled garden-ish internet created by big tech in the US mostly. I haven't seen that pan out, have you?
You haven't seen that pan out because indeed, probably we're talking here about 5 or 10 years where we have really some first good applications, whereas we talk of a huge manifestation over a very much longer time of vested interests that have built the internet, that have built capital markets, that have built corporate structures as we see them today. This will not change in 5 or 10 years. But look at the younger generation, look at those that are 30 years or younger. The biggest source of innovation in the Web3 space and also in the virtual world space is gaming. I'm not saying that gaming is the most important use case, but it's the biggest source of innovation. We have 3.5 billion gamers globally. We have a lot of communities that are driving technology that are growing up with a completely different view of the world, of a decentralized world, of an interconnected world, of a world where you can have different identities, temporary identities, context-dependent identities. You can engage in seamless combinations of the production of goods, of distribution of services, of gaming, of the way that you behave in a way. This is something that will stay. And ask me the question again in 10 or 20 years. I'm fully convinced that we will not have completely replaced, of course, the system that is there, and there's no need to do that, but that the Web3 space as such will have exploded.
Okay, stick around for 10 years. I will ask it again.
I have a coffee in between, but I'll be there.
Right. Hannah, one thing that I'd like to get a sense of is essentially what we were kind of gesturing towards alongside Joachim is, I mean, the language used, especially in the consultation, seems to be a lot about preventing Web 2 from happening again when we have the metaverse. So we don't want just a few companies controlling the game to just embrace the gaming lingo. And we want to make sure that the metaverse is going to be, if it exists, a bit more open and less beholden to a few giants. Is my reading correct? And can you give me a sense of whether that's the thinking, essentially?
Yeah. Oh, clearly. So first of all, I agree with all the speakers. I don't agree completely with you, but we can have a coffee together and align our positions. So the one thing I wanted to comment on what Joachim says, and then I come to you. What Joachim says is important. It's not going to be a linear progression. Huh? It's really, we will have this development happening. It's not that Web3 will lead Web 4. Web 4 will build on the advances that we will have in the decentralized technology, especially blockchain, but not only. So that is important. Now, obviously, in the in the call for evidence, we say clearly that it is about learning from the errors of the past, and we have some important lessons. One important lesson is that it is not the Wild West, and it's also something that Commissioner Breton said right away in his blog. So we have a number of rules of the game, because it is a huge game we are playing here. The stakes, the economic stakes are very high, especially for our key industrial sectors. So we have games, we have to make sure that we put upfront at the beginning, at the onset of this development, what matters, which is open virtual worlds, interoperable, at the service of the human. So here, the responsibility is very important of the gatekeepers, which are also the early movers in this virtual world, to make sure that we are tackling all the issues that we had to legislate a bit too late. So that is important, is how do we make sure that from this very, at this onset, really this nascent stage of Web 4, we can make sure that we really have a level playing field for all industrial players to be able to compete in a fair manner.
Right. Just totally random question, but I was wondering, do you have internally any kind of estimates, any calculation on how many people will be using VR, AR, extended reality, or the metaverse in the next 5, 10 years? So how big is the thing we're talking about? Because I love games, and I'm sure many other people, such as the gentleman in the audience, also use virtual reality, but it's a niche market so far. It's growing, but it's not the whole population. So do you have a sense of how exponentially VR will extend beyond gaming?
So, Jen, I think there's a confusion we're making about AR, VR, and metaverse and virtual worlds.
Okay, please clean it up.
Yeah, what is important here is that the immersion technologies, and I'm responsible for in the Commission for the R&D on XR. So these are one important enabling technologies. They're not the only ones. For virtual worlds to be able to function in a seamless manner, you need to have a number of technologies that need to come together. You need to have high-speed connectivity, super high-speed connectivity. You need to have technologies such as AI. You need to have the data that will be generated and collected and feedback. You need to have XR. You need to have the blockchain technologies. So it's all of them coming together. And immersion is one important aspect, will not be the only one. So that is important. Now, we have a number of studies, including the ones that we commissioned on XR specifically. Right. So it gives you a snapshot of the stakes. So in the Ecoris study that we published 2 years ago, or was it last year, we have a forecast which says that in XR only, we're speaking about roughly 850,000 jobs by 2025.
Right.
So it just gives
that's jobs. What about users?
The users, you mean in terms of how many users?
People connecting to virtual worlds every day, daily active users.
Well, it depends on the kind of use cases that we will be able to develop in the different sectors. But if you look at some of the industrial sectors, and Ludwig and Joachim mentioned them, I mean, it's already happening in the automotive sector, in the aerospace. I mean, you already have professional users using virtual worlds. So it's about bringing this to some more mainstream uses that affect citizens' daily life. It's beyond gaming. It's really about essential activities that impact their daily lives.
I have to ask it. I should have asked it at the beginning. Why was the initiative's unveiling postponed to June? What happened?
I said that in the beginning. It's only an administrative optimization because our dates change. They are arranged, they're postponed, they're brought forward. So there is nothing behind except an administrative planning. That's all.
No, I'm not a QAnon conspiracy theorist.
It's as simple as that.
Fair enough. Yeah. Ludwig, how much is NVIDIA investing in this, in immersive technologies, in virtual worlds, in metaverses? And so, again, you are bullish personally, but what about companies?
Well, it is one of our biggest opportunities that we see for us and our ecosystem to invest in. And we very much have a strategy of providing platform technologies, hardware and software, that allow, for instance, companies to build metaverse applications and to use them today, as I mentioned earlier. And many still see NVIDIA as the sort of video card company. Well, yes, gaming is still it's a market that we support, but it only makes up about a third of our business, and it takes up less than a third of our workforce. Lots of them are currently working on enhancing the technology that allows the users. I mentioned BMW earlier. There are others around the world, effectively, who use metaverse-like technology to build interactive 3D solutions for their various industrial use cases. So it's a very big opportunity we see there, and we invest significantly.
Number for me?
We don't have a number.
Sad.
But it's thousands of engineers that work on these solutions around our platform technology that we call Omniverse.
Omniverse. We needed another thing, yeah, of course.
And so, by the way, one specific feature of that is that it is extremely open. There are now more than 100 software products that are supported by it. So you don't, they allow, for instance, the users to have, let's say, a computer-aided design software from one vendor used to design a building, and another software from a completely different vendor to do the interior design, and to bring that together in a 3D model that allows an architect to work with their clients in completely designing the space that they want.
And then they can kind of explore it.
And then they can explore it, and if the client wants, they can have their own avatar walk through the conference room.
Just a very quick question. There is a big problem with VR headsets, which is that they give you motion sickness after 15 minutes of prolonged use of 20. It has been improving. How have you been grappling with that? Have you at all?
Very simply, you don't need one. You don't necessarily need a VR headset to actually go through one such virtual environment.
So you just look at a screen?
You can look at a screen. It can be a big screen. It can be a small screen. And I would put more emphasis on augmented reality going forward that allow you to actually be physically in a space. Take the example of the car factory that I mentioned earlier. You know, you can be there, and on your augmented glass, you can see the real world, the real factory, and at the same time, in a little screen, not a big screen, not a heavy screen. Only when you look at it, it is overlaid by a design, for instance, or what a colleague in another facility that is seeing. So
motion sickness is not a big problem for you. Dragos, what questions do you have? You have a list there. We can ask.
No, I've made my list listening because, as I said, I'm in learning mode this morning.
That's right.
And the one lesson I learned is that this is actually maybe a word, I don't know if it was taken already or not. So we're not talking of metaverse, not talking of omniverse, of multiverses, in fact. So we have a multiverse out there.
Everything.
That's the one takeaway that I take that I get from today's conversation. And I actually agree. I also don't believe that we're going to see anytime soon just one big virtual world out there that we call whatever we'll end up calling. But probably several overlapping environments interacting with each other. But still, my questions would be, and I've heard also the other panelists putting forward some of these questions, what are the effects of some of the technologies that we're going to integrate into these metaverses, multiverses, omniverses? I've heard immersiveness having psychological impacts. I guess that as we will be progressing with these multiverses, and as people will be integrating more and more or immersing themselves more and more into these universes, things will and questions will arise. I don't want to say that we should be necessarily worried about it. So I'm a liberal politician. I believe in innovation. I also think that at this stage we shouldn't be rushing quickly to say, oh, we want to put rules into place. I think we still have to allow these nascent technologies to actually play the effects out there, to do the good part that they need to do to accelerate the data economy of tomorrow. But again, I think we also have a duty of care as politicians. At least I feel that I have that duty to constantly stay in sync with what is going on, because there will be, I think, a moment in time. I can't say whether it's going to be in 2 years or in 5 years or less or more, but I'm convinced that the moment will come when we will have to say, well, maybe a minimum set of rules might be necessary, because otherwise we'll have to accept that the only rules they're going to play by would be the rules of those gatekeepers that will be controlling those overlapping universes. And we can say, well, it doesn't have any real effect in society, or it will start having effects in society, not only in those controlled environments. And I think that's when, again, as regulators, we might need to step in.
Should we try and make the metaverse happen, in your opinion? Should regulators kind of invest
Which
in...
one?
Should we gun for it in some way?
Well, again, I
think... Should the EU try to make it happen with investment and all that?
If, from what I've heard today, my answer is certainly yes.
Oh, wow.
I think we should be stimulating, we should be encouraging the integration and the development of these technologies. Because, again, I fully agree, there's a lot of innovation that comes from that, innovation that helps. It can also help in other areas, in other walks of life. So I think that at this stage, the one thing we should be doing is encourage, stimulate, create the conditions for those environments to actually be used, taken up by the various industries.
Metaverse, yes.
Metaverse, yes, for now. But again, the moment that will start having effects that go beyond the controlled script of those universes, I think that's when we will have to responsibly look at.
But you know the law of
entropy.
You know the law of entropy. Once you fry a calamari, you can't get the squid back.
Yeah, but I don't think we are in that logic. I don't think we are frying the calamari. I think we are just making sure that there are as many calamaris out there. And then the point will come when we'll have to think of frying them.
It's fantastic.
I close the metaphor.
We have like final 10 seconds technical, but let's do 30. Rihanna, what's your parting shot for all of us?
So,
very pithy, please.
I agree with what you said. So stimulate, help to innovate. I would go even further. What we want is that the EU becomes the best market where our industries and startups can pioneer the work ahead of us for Web 4, and that our citizens are empowered and safe to be able to make the best use of it. It's really that. It's really pioneering these huge opportunities out there.
Right, fantastic. For the audience and for the panelists, who knows what the metaverse is now, after the conversation? 1, 2... Some people actually... there are fewer people than before. Who knows what Web 4 is after this conversation?
Oh, wow.
1, 2, 3. Okay, Dragos, you learned something today.
I learned something today.
I suppose we're all on a learning journey. Thank you, everyone, and I hope you enjoyed this. Thank you very much.
Thank you.